Hey guys, welcome back. So today, working on something a little bit different. This is a Dingo Go-Kart. I believe it's about 25 years old, and it's rusty and crusty, but it has good bones and good potential. The tires, they're all flat, but at least they're there. The steering seems to work, and the brakes actually work as well. So we're off to a good start. The engine is currently uninstalled, and I think that's where I'm going to have a bit of work on this. The engine and the go-kart were left outside for quite a while, and the tank, as you can imagine, it doesn't look great. I'm sure the carburetor looks just as good, but the engine, it is not stuck, but it doesn't sound good. I actually don't want to turn it too much. I hear a lot of scraping. I'm not sure if it's coming from the piston and the cylinder, or potentially the flywheel rubbing against the ignition coil. So we definitely need to dig in that, but I think I'm going to start by just pressure washing this frame, get all the dirt and the loose rust off, try to air up those tires, and then move on to that engine. All right, I'm going to let my son air this one up. He's dying to get this go-kart up and running.
It's filling.
That should be good.
It's not there yet. That's good.
This one did air up, but I can hear and feel the air coming out of this crack. So, might need some new tires, but let's air up the rest, see if any of them hold any air. Yeah, we get a lot of air leaking on this one as well. All right, that's good.
Oh, I like the truck. Hi. That's good, I think.
That's good.
Maybe a little more.
Sure. I may have been wrong about the front tires. I think they have tubes in them, so the bubbles that I saw might have just been the air getting squeezed out between the tube and the tire. I'm not sure, so I'm just going to roll this out of the way for now. We'll let it sit for a while and see if any of these tires hold air. Whoa. That spark plug does not look good. It is rusted or melted. It's really weird. So we'll need a new one of those. But for now, I'm just going to pull it off. Get a little PB blaster in there and see if that loosens the engine up a bit. No compression, and the engine just got stuck. So, yeah, not looking too good. I also see dirt falling out on the recoil side, so I'm going to get the blower housing off, just get a look in there. And, yeah, this one, I'm not sure. Might be a good candidate for a Predator replacement, but let's keep going, see how far we get. Yeah, good news, I think. That noise, pretty sure it's just the flywheel on the coil. So I'm going to vacuum that out, blow it out, maybe take some sandpaper to the flywheel. But yeah, this engine, I'd say it was sitting in dirt or mud, because this whole section is, I assume, rotted away, and a ton of dirt just came right out. So, yeah, I wouldn't say this engine looks great, but I think it will run, assuming I can get compression. Ooh, I think I just heard compression. Yeah, somehow we now have compression. Nice. Going to go out on a limb here and say that this ignition coil probably doesn't work. It's rusted quite a bit. We have rust jacking pushing the laminations apart. And the kill wire, it's still here, but all the insulation for the most part is missing. It's just bare copper right there. So I'm going to try to get this coil off. Hopefully these release. I do have coils for 9 and 10 horse engines that I think will fit on this flywheel just fine. The boot, it's a little bit different, but I think that'll be okay. So let's try to get those loose. Huh. Nothing left on that one. Let me try a smaller bit, see if it'll get on there. No, 7 millimeters, not close. An 8 fits, but I think it's just going to strip it out. Let's try. It's already rounded. Let's finish the job. Wow. Well, I think I'm kind of dead on the water here. This coil, the one that I pulled off, if there was any question of it being bad, I'd say that question is gone because I didn't even notice what is going on here. And on the back side, there's supposed to be a tab right there where you connect the wire to kill spark, and that is corroded off. So, yeah, this coil, it is definitely out. You know, I thought I could get away with using this Briggs coil from a 10 horse engine. It also fits the 9 horse. It seems to fit the flywheel just fine, but the issue is actually with these holes right here. The screw that's used to hold this on this engine, it's a wider diameter, and it doesn't really fit. And even if it did, these holes, they're drilled more on the outer edge. And on this coil, they're centered. And it's not a big difference, but it's enough to throw the alignment off by about 1/8 of an inch. And there is no way to bolt this one on. So yeah, I need to place an order for the correct coil and continue this another day. The ignition coil, it's been ordered. It'll be here tomorrow. And I also ordered a carburetor rebuild kit. I am sure this carburetor needs to be cleaned and rebuilt. So I'm going to get that uninstalled now. To do that, I need to get the airbox off, and the carb and the fuel tank will come off as one unit. We'll get that inside, clean it up, so when the kit gets here, we can just throw everything together and try this thing out. Yep, that's not a good sign. Probably not the best design by Briggs, having the airbox facing up, but yeah, water definitely got in, which caused all this rust. Or actually, not really rust. It looks like a varnishy goo. So yeah, that may not be a bad thing, but this airbox definitely has to be cleaned up. And that carburetor, I'm sure, looks exactly the same. In order to get the carburetor off, there is a bolt right there and another one on the bottom side. A little hard to get to, but definitely doable. The carb is attached to the tank, so the tank needs to come as well. And for that, there's one bolt on a bracket down here holding it on. Unfortunately, the torque converter is in the way. At least this pulley is, as well as the plate on the bottom here. So I need to get that and the plate uninstalled, and then we should be able to get this removed. That was easy. Sorry for the noise. My neighbor's cleaning his yard, and actually behind me I'm testing another generator, so you can kind of hear that too. I can't really complain since I make more noise than anyone. Okay, good. Both of those are loose. So let's get the tank bracket loose and it should come right off. This one's going to be a bit of a learning experience. I have never had to rebuild a Pulsajet. Yeah, let's try the impact. Yeah, I'm kind of second guessing myself on this one as far as the approach I'm taking. I was hoping to get this cleaned up, so when the ignition coil shows up in the rebuild kit, we can just rebuild this and throw it back in. But now that I can see it, we need more than a rebuild kit. The fuel pickup is in pretty bad shape, has to be replaced. This copper tube does not look good. Probably need a new one of those. Main jet's plugged. And this here is pretty corroded. I think it's a sacrificial anode. At least I hope it is, because if it's anything else, then this carb is definitely shot. So, yeah, I think I'm going to hold off before ordering any more parts. There are good clone carburetors on Amazon for about 30 bucks that have good reviews. So instead of spending more money on this one, I think in this case I might try a clone, but I don't want to order a clone yet. I'm going to wait till the ignition coil shows up. I want to hear the engine run before I order anything. Now, as far as the fuel tank goes, this one I was not planning on cleaning up, and I'm still not. It's not really feasible because inside there are baffles and foam. So you can't really clean the whole tank. Even if you drop nuts and bolts down in here, it's just going to go into a baffle and not really do a whole lot. And I'm also a little confused because the way this works is that the fuel pump continuously pumps fuel up and drips it down into the bowl where the main jet picks it up. But there's no bowl on this. So I don't see how this carburetor would have ever worked in this tank. So I did just double check the parts diagram, and it doesn't look like that is the correct tank for this carburetor and for that engine. The other tank that I was given, which is pretty clean, seems to match as far as this pattern right here, and it has a bowl. Granted, it's rusted, but the rest of the tank's in pretty good shape. So I think what I'm going to do instead is just put a bunch of evaporust in there. We'll let that sit for a few days, and I will order that clone carb if the engine runs. We also need a cap. So yeah, we'll hold off, see how that engine does, and go from there. But first, I need to get this old tank drained out. It smells really bad. That might be the bowl. A lot of rust. Coil showed up today. Surprisingly, it's a Briggs and Stratton coil. I actually thought I got a clone, which this kind of looks like one, but yeah, can't complain. We have the wire that was chewed up and a good coil. So let's get this mounted. It's not labeled which side out, but I'm assuming this is the outside since it has the tab for the engine cooling right there. the plug that I pulled out of there, it was an Autolite 255, and that is not the right plug for this engine. Usually it would have come with a Champion. I think it was an RJ19LM, which I don't have. Or I should say I do have, but it's pretty old. Instead, I have an NGK BR2LM. Slightly used, but in good condition. So let's get this hooked up. And I'm just going to rotate the engine, make sure we have spark. Beautiful. Got good spark. Yeah, oil smells good, feels good. I think it's fine to test with. All right, very nice. The engine, it sounds good. So I'm going to place the order for that clone carburetor, and then we should be able to finish up the fuel system here on the left side of the engine. But I do want to get it running again one more time. I'm going to put some more fuel down the spark plug hole, pull it over, and then feed it a little bit with starting fluid right through the intake. I want to see if the torque converter plate is moving. I did not see that, and I don't know if I have an issue here. So, yeah, let's try it again. Okay, well, it does work, but it's not returning when the engine slows down. So potentially it might work itself out, and I kind of doubt it, but I'm going to hold off on opening that up until we get the carb and the tank sorted out, and then I'll turn my attention back to that. The new carb showed up today, and for the most part, it looks to be correct. So I think it is going to work out just fine, at least as far as fitment goes. I did get it from Amazon, so if it ends up being a dud, it's easy enough to return, but there is one notable difference. On the original carb, it had 3 linkages coming to the carburetor. One was the choke, the other the throttle, and that's usually all you see on carburetors, and that's all that carburetor came with, but the OEM one has this extra linkage right here. And that corresponds with the fuel pump. So I'm thinking that just varies the flow of fuel coming up from the bottom and into the bowl. But yeah, so that one's going to be pumping at full speed. I don't think that's an issue because the way they design it is that the bowl is supposed to overflow and the excess goes back to the tank. So I think we'll be okay, but that brings me to the next issue. The evaporust kind of backfired on me. I use it because it is safe on metal. It will not eat metal. It only eats rust. But 36 hours in, the evaporust disappeared from the bowl. So I developed a pinhole, and yeah, this tank I think needs to be replaced. But as long as the hole isn't too big, I think the pump will keep up just fine, especially since this one is pumping at full speed. But longer term, yeah, I need a new tank. Unfortunately, it's a discontinued part, and I can't find it used, or a clone for that matter. So I'm going to leave the part number in the description. If you happen to have one of these on a shelf and want to part with it, please let me know. But for now, I'm going to use what I have. But to that end, I do still want to clean this up a bit. I'm going to lightly go over it with a wire wheel. I just want to knock off any rust that might flake off because the carburetor only has a filter on the pickup. The assumption is once it's in the bowl, it's clean fuel, and there's nothing between the bowl and the main jet. So any bits of rust are going to clog that up pretty quickly. So yeah, we'll just lightly brush the loose rust, kind of blow it out of there, and proceed with getting this thing together. That's just the evaporust. It's leaking pretty fast. Yeah, that's not a pinhole. That's a pretty fast leak. So, I'm at a bit of an impasse here as far as what to do. As a last-ditch effort, I was going to JB weld the bowl to get it to hold fuel, but I don't think that's going to work, and it has nothing to do with the JB weld. I think that'll work fine. The clone carburetor, it came with a gasket, and that gasket shape matches the old tank, which is a bit odd because the parts diagram for that engine clearly shows a teardrop shape. But the thing that sealed the deal was that both the OEM carb and the clone carb require 4 bolts to hold it down. 2 right there and 2 right there. And on this tank, we have the 2 on this side, but over here, we only have 1. So there is no way this tank is going to work. And of course, this tank is out because it has no bowl whatsoever. So I think what I'm going to do is post something on my community tab. See if anyone has a tank like this that they're willing to part with. And if they do, we'll continue this in a bit. But if they don't, then I'm going to have to resort to plan B and do a Predator swap. So let me pause it here. I'll give it some time and see what comes of it. It's been a few days since I made the post, and no one's come forward yet, which is okay. I think it is going to take time, but I did reach out to a bunch of small engine people in my area just to see if they had this tank, and nobody does. But Jason from Pate's Performance, he did hook me up with a guy that doesn't have this tank, but he does have a tank setup for a 5-horse engine. It requires a different carburetor and airbox, which he is willing to sell as a package for $130. But that tank doesn't look great inside. It might be usable, but I don't know if it's really an improvement over what I have. And when doing a bigger search on eBay, a wider search, not for this specific part number, there are plenty of tanks out there for a 5-horse engine that should bolt on, assuming it has the matching carburetor and airbox. And the prices range from about $100 all the way up to $200, depending upon how good they are on the inside. Anyway, I don't want to wait for the perfect tank. I'm going to go back to the plan of applying JB Weld in here. We'll let that cure up and give this tank a try, even with the 3 bolts. You know, 4th would be nice, but I don't think it's needed for testing. And I am going to try to rebuild this as well. You know, I want to stick with OEM as much as possible. If this ends up being a complete dud, I always have the clone. Yeah, a little more. Up. And that's it. Hopefully that stops the leak. So I'm going to let this cure for about 24 hours and then test it out. So there's not much in here. It's just the spring and this little piece that goes on top of it. And this here is what needs to be replaced. This is the pump. Those are the check valves. And a lot of times these get pretty crispy over time and they just don't work right. Yeah, I'd say this one was definitely due for a cleaning. I don't think all that is supposed to be there. So that should be cleaned. And this, yeah, it's definitely not the way it should be. So we'll get that replaced. And let's see what's next. This is the pilot jet. And before removing that, I'm just going to see where it's set right now by turning it in and counting the turns. It was 1 turn. So when we put this back together, we'll set it back to 1 turn out. And we can always adjust it later. Yeah, I think I need to at least remove the plastic piece and make sure the tube is clear. I'm not going to replace this yet. I don't know if this is the carburetor I'm going to use or even what tank I'm going to use. So depending upon the tank, it kind of drives what carburetor I use. So I'm not going to make this perfect, but I might have something that'll work kind of as a hack in place of this. So we'll give that a try. That was easy. Well, it's not clogged, so that's a good sign. Let's try to clear the main jet next. Gonna try this micro drill bit. Not sure the jet size, so I'm starting what I think is pretty small. So I really just want to clear the obstruction and not drill the jet. There we go. Okay, it's clear. All things considered, it's cleaned up really well. So it'll definitely run, I'm sure of it. I guess the question is how well. This shaft right here, I'm still kind of scratching my head on. Now that the pump's apart, you can't see the shaft at all. It almost looks like it doesn't serve a purpose. So the rebuild kit came with a new spring and this little cap that goes over the spring. I'm not sure I'm going to use this spring though. It's not an OEM kit. And this spring's quite a bit taller. So when reassembling it, because it's so much taller, it's going to be hard to hold this in place while getting the cover on. So yeah, I don't need those parts. We'll stick with the original spring. This little cap that goes on top. And this piece here, I think it goes like that. Yep. That is one turnout. Going to do an extra half. 1.5, 2 turns out usually is a good starting point. So we'll leave it there. This here is the idle set screw. And you can see somebody drove that all the way in. So I'm going to back that off at least by half. All right, that should be good. So theoretically, that's it. This should be a running carburetor. So we'll give that JB Weld a bit of time to cure and then try it out. We'll give the evaporust a chance at redemption. This, I think, has enough metal left. Okay, I gave the JB Weld a couple days to cure. Let's see if it holds. Perfect. That'll do. The airbox also came out pretty well. That was 24 hours in the evaporust. So I think we're good to go. What I'm going to do to replace the fuel pickup is use this 3/16 line. And if I push it all the way up, it stays on there nice and tight. And on the other end, I'm going to use basically a chainsaw filter. It's going to be a little more restrictive, so that could be an issue. And of course the diameter here, it's too small for this. So I think what I'm going to do is just use a piece of this line, which fits it perfectly. And then I believe the outer diameter of this line should fit snugly into there. But first I need to cut this to size. So it would be approximately right about there. So this is just a temporary solution, unless of course it works. But all kidding aside, the person I got this go-kart from, Bill, he is a local subscriber, and he actually found a third tank, and that tank matches perfectly as far as what I need with the 4th bolt hole and the shape as well for the carburetor that I'm using. It doesn't have the baffles, but I think that'll be okay. The tank looks to be in really good shape. So at some point, this will get swapped out for that other tank. That should do. There we go. I also picked up a new kit for the breather. The elbow was missing right here, and it was cracked down below. So let's see. Probably just goes like that. And we got a few linkages here. We have one for the choke, which we can install later. This one runs to the governor arm, so we'll do that when we install on the engine. Then this one here connects to this bracket and should clip in like that. You can see that was split. I knew it was going too easy. I did forget to install the shields right here, so I think I can still do it without uninstalling everything and starting over. So let's give it a try. Perfect. The cap also came in. All right. Let's see how it runs. Going to bring that idle up a bit. Okay, good. The engine sounds good, but I did shut it down because I noticed fuel coming out that hole right there. Usually there's a screw right there holding that control panel in place. So I'm just going to put that screw in place and then try restarting it. Not too bad. Carburetor, it's running the engine well. I ended up setting that pilot jet back to one turnout. The engine definitely ran best in that position. And reinstalling this bolt, it did stop that leak. But the new fuel cap, couldn't help notice, but it was leaking. So we'll have to look into that a bit more. But all things considered, I didn't give this engine much hope. When I first opened this thing up, it looked pretty bad. And I thought for sure this thing was pretty much DOA. But yeah, at this point, it's nearly 100%. Anyway, I'm going to turn my attention to that torque converter. I know that plate isn't going in on its own, so I'm going to reinstall the driven pulley and the belt. I'm hoping that's the missing piece. So we'll get that installed, we'll try it again, and if it's still not working right, then we're going to have to take that apart next. I think it's earned it. Before I get that torque converter on, I'm going to put the controls back on as well as the air box. So first thing, I need to remove this old wire from the old ignition coil. And install the new. Seems like this one's stripped out a bit. So I'm going to try to find a longer bolt, because I didn't have that problem before I put the control panel in, but now that it's there, it just can't grab enough threads. Gonna give this one a try here on the right. It was quite a bit longer. I had to cut it down, cut it about the same length as the one that came out, but you can see the original one, the threads ended, yeah, at least a 1/4 inch before the actual bolt ended. So yeah, hopefully this will do it. Perfect. The driven pulley, it's just held on by these 4 studs to the engine block, but these are pretty corroded and the threads are not in very good shape. So I've cut down 3 bolts. I've got 1 more to go. Then we should be able to get that pulley back in place. Definitely not a good belt, but the torque converter may not be good either, so let's at least test it before deciding if I need a new torque converter. Okay, I've got the engine bolted down. There's no chain on the sprocket, so this cart is not going to move. But I do want to get the engine started and just see how these pulleys react and see if this torque converter is any good. Okay, well, not exactly what I was hoping to see. The driven pulley, it wasn't doing really anything. I was expecting as the RPMs picked up that this pulley would open up, decreasing its diameter, and it didn't do that. So, although this one seemed to be working, the plate was coming out and it was taking up the slack and engaging this pulley here. Without this one opening, this isn't going to function properly. So yeah, potentially there is something wrong here. Maybe it's the belt, or maybe it's the fact we don't have a chain, a load on this pulley. So I think I'm going to install the chain. This did come with a chain, which I wasn't sure was right, but I just put it on the sprocket and it seems to be exactly the right size, except for the fact I don't have a master link. But when looking over this little piece here, I found that this one actually has 2 master links. So I'm going to steal one of those. We'll get this chain installed and we'll try this again. Sure, there's a proper tool for this, but I don't have it. Unfortunately, adding the chain, it made no difference. This driven pulley, it seems to be seized. I haven't given up on it yet. Potentially it might work itself out, but for now I'm going to ignore this issue because now that the axle is spinning, I can see there's other issues as well. The sprocket seems to be warped and the axle as well, especially on the left side. I saw it kind of wobbling quite a bit. So it could be the axle, it could be the tire, might be both. I'm not sure, but the good news is it's not a generator, it's a fun toy, and all these parts are replaceable. It's just a matter of how much money you're willing to spend. So that most likely will come to that, but not for now. We're actually pretty close to getting this thing going under its own power. Even though this issue exists, this isn't going to function as a CVT, but it is still functioning as a clutch. So we should be able to drive around. But before doing that, there's still a few things I need to do. I need to hook up the kill wire and actually test it, make sure it works. The cable for the throttle control needs to be actually replaced because the cable snapped up here. So I have a new one of those. I think it's the right part, but I guess we'll find out in a minute. And of course the tires, they're in terrible shape. They need to be replaced. Surprisingly, the ones on the left are holding air, but this one, it leaks out after a couple days, so that's usable for now. But this one, it comes out as fast as I put it in. So yeah, I need to replace the tube, and it should be pretty easy, but yeah, the bolts I'm sure are rusted in, so it may not be as easy as I think. Anyway, let's get going on the kill switch on the steering wheel. We'll fix that cable up and then finish it up with that tire. Let's just clean some of this rust off before testing it. Actually, I'm just going to replace it. It's pitted pretty bad. So, yeah, let's just replace it. Going to test the circuit with this multimeter set to test continuity. I've got this black lead connected over to the wire that I just added the new terminal on, and the other lead I'm going to use to test the switch. There's two wires coming out, a yellow, which it looks like goes down into the frame, and I think that's the green wire on the other end. And then there's another connection here to ground. So I'm going to attach the probe there. We'll flick the switch and see if we get anything out of that. So let's check the yellow wire. We get nothing, but we do get a connection on the black wire. That's interesting because this wire, if this is the one going to the back, there should be no connection over to ground. And it seems like there isn't. So what am I missing here? Let's cut the zip tie. Ah, we get two yellow. Okay, that explains it. So the top one here, that should be the green wire in the back. And it is. And this is the ground right here, which there should be no connection unless I turn the switch to off. So the switch, it works. It's just a really dirty connection to ground. So yeah, let's get the screw off, clean this terminal up, and we'll try it again. And unfortunately, the nut on the other side, it's completely stripped out. So the bolt has to be cut off. But before I do that, let's actually just clean up a spot right here. See if there is a connection to ground before making that decision. Yeah, there's nothing. So I need to cut this off. I think all the rust in there is just preventing a good ground. That was a waste of time. The wheel, I had assumed it was just plastic on a metal shaft, and once that bolt was removed, it would lift right off. But that's not the case. The wheel actually has metal molded in it, and it's rust jacked together. So yeah, this wheel I don't think is ever gonna come out. So I'll put a new bolt in just in case, and instead I'll try to pick up a ground maybe from this frame rail right there. I started with this switch because I thought it would be easy. Anyway, I moved the probe from this wire here to a clean spot on the frame, and just wanted to double check that we have a good connection to ground for the engine, which we do, and to the frame up here. And we do. So as long as I attach this wire here, when I turn the switch to off, it should send a good ground to this wire right here. And if that's connected to this one, which runs to the coil, that should shut the engine down. This is just an insulated post. It's where you connect the ground from the switch to the coil. Okay, we're one step closer. We can cross that off the list. Let's try getting this cable off. There's a bolt going through the pedal holding this on, so that needs to come off, as well as that one right there. I'm just loosely assembling it on this end for now, and we'll fine tune this once we have it attached to the engine. Looks like it's going to be long enough. Okay. So this piece, I think, drops in right up here. Maybe. Like that. And then this gets screwed onto that little piece I just inserted. So let's see. Tiny fingers would be good. Yeah, I think I got it. So idle is to the left. I have the pedal up right now, so I'm going to tighten that to lock the cable in place. And last but not least, the throttle return spring. Yeah, I think it's perfect. We're getting full throttle, and the pedal is hitting against the stop when it reaches full throttle. So that's where you want it to be. So I'm going to lock this down tight, and I'm going to replace this with a nylock nut, and then we can move on to the tire. I tried removing the bushing from the old cable. It goes right in the middle and just helps everything pivot real nice. Unfortunately, I completely butchered it. So that's out. You know, I tried a few others that I have, and none of them fit properly. But I did find a Bic pen, and cut it to size. So it's a temporary solution, but it'll just help this move smoothly and not bind up. Theoretically, this should be easy. It's a split rim, only 3 bolts holding it on, so let's see if any of those come out. There's a lot of junk in there, a lot of dirt, a little bit of water. Just want to get the debris out so we don't immediately pop the new tube. Might need a new seat. I think there's supposed to be something under here. Huh. Well, there was. I see little signs of maybe what used to be a piece of plywood, because there's nothing under here except foam. So I'm going to see if I can get this off and lay a piece of wood down or something. Maybe. What can I say? This thing's a lot of fun, but I had to shut it down. I was getting a little concerned that I might fall through. That definitely needs to be addressed. There's still a bunch of things that have to be done to this, but you know, my goal was to get this thing mechanically 100%, and I think we're there. Everything is working more or less the way that it's supposed to. I think the only thing that's still an outstanding issue is the driven pulley. It's not opening up, so it's limiting the top speed, but even so, it was going pretty fast as is, so I'm happy with the way this turned out. So I'm going to cut the video for now. I'm sure there's going to be a part 2 to this. It needs to be painted. We need a new seat and new tires at a minimum, maybe a little more. So I hope this video helps someone. Thanks for watching. I think I'm going to give the kids a few weeks playing on this before starting part 2. They're having a lot of fun with this the way that it is, and I hate to just tear it apart, trying to make it a little bit better. You know, as it is, it's pretty good. lot of fun. Should I be worried?
Dad?
Yeah.
What's that noise?
That's the belt. We need a new belt.
What?
That's the belt.
Oh, wait.
It's sweet. We need a new one. That one's going to fall apart. Getting a little daring. Getting a little daring. Just don't stand in front of her.